I did, but
Oh,
I shared, but that's fine.
we have a lot of extras. You can
Oh,
read it.
thank you.
I'm using that as my notes also.
So, start with public comment. And I believe you,
Any?
I could just introduce myself. I'm Ed Ciccarello. I was on the Sustainable Rocky Hill Task Force, and one of the actions that I was pursuing was affordable housing. And so I see that Kim gave you something in your packet that I provided her. I also, I took the affordable housing plan. As you all know, the plan is, I think, 26 pages or so, and I synthesized it down to one page. I don't know if you got that, but I could send it to you perhaps for the next meeting. It's a very good sheet to look at and to see the entire plan on one page. So you have, 40,000-foot view of what to do. I was looking at this, and I was going to bring up trying to get the town council to establish a special affordable housing fund. I think that's one of the first things. If you look at the affordable housing plan, it's up there at the top. And to do that, you can take a percentage of planning and zoning permits, and to start building that fund up. So I guess I'll be interested in hearing that on D when they report on the affordable housing funds. And the other thing I want to just say is that I think one of the things that has to happen with this commission is that an administrator has to be named. And I don't know if that administrator is going to be town staff or it's going to be a volunteer resident. And boilerplate or language needs to be adopted for all the affordable housing units, especially the ones that are coming online, right? Like Kelson Road is going to have 24, I think. So those two items I just wanted to bring to your attention. But thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Kim, can I ask you, are we allowed to talk to public speakers? Because I know in formal meetings we can't.
I would say yes.
Good.
And I would like to answer something also. Concerning the affordable housing that we are getting through various planning and zoning projects, they are mandated, and we are mandating them to put together a plan as if their affordable housing plan, while it's not an 830G application, which is by statute, we are mandating them to supply us with that type of plan to that detail. And once, before a CO is issued, that plan needs to be filed in the land records. So we're working through that, so.
Yeah.
But how does that, what's the mechanism of making sure that they're, sticking with that plan? What's the mechanism for, okay, we have 24 deed restricted affordable units. How do we know that they have?
And it's reportable, it's a reportable to planning and zoning.
So once a year, they have to say, these are the units that right now are,
And they have to, it's a reportable, I mean, the language has all been vetted through our town legal.
Yeah, I'm sure that
counsel
this
as
isn't
far as
the first rodeo.
The planning goes. So that's kind of a template that we're using there. And then, I mean, this is all new to us as well, okay? Because we haven't had this before. So that's how it's going to work as far as we know.
are they imposing any, time limits on, that they need to continue using these apartments for affordable housing for 20 years?
40 years.
40
I
years.
won't worry about that.
Okay. That's good to know.
Well, the important thing though is that it's deed restricted, so it's recorded with the deed.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then,
And they have to report every year. too.
and they sell it in 10 years after their giant tax abatement is over, and then somebody else buys it, and maybe Kim's not here anymore, or somebody, nobody's here anymore, and then at least we still have that record from
Yep.
origination that says
It
this is
needs
the
to
deal.
be-
Yeah, and every year we're getting a report.
As will the other units on Stepney Place and 2094 Silas Dean and 125 Henkel
And
so
like
on
Bel
and so
Air,
on.
that has
Yep.
like 2.
Yeah.
Jim, did you say that the town attorney has already drafted language?
No, he's already reviewed language that was already submitted, so,
By,
yeah, so.
by whom?
We're using the 125 Henkel, the 830G application is kind of like the go-to model, and that was vetted through.
Just, when I get to my little bit, I'm not gonna get into the detail, but in investigating the inventory of so-called affordable housing with 40-year restriction for 40 years, one of the properties I was investigating is at Greenfield Village, near where you live.
Yeah.
And this is a declaration of land use restrictive covenant, and this
And that's older.
was done,
I imagine.
pardon me?
I imagine that's older.
No, this was done because there was a transfer, hang on, in the last, come on, where's the signature page? 2018.
Is that an HOV?
No, it's a
Greenfield Village.
condominium
Okay.
Never.
in which 10 units were isolated and
Is
they
that the
continued.
Corporation for Independent Living?
It was, but it's not anymore. They were sold
Okay.
back to the entity, the Conover entity. And I'll just read one portion, it gives you a sense of what it is. This is section 3, use restrictions. Throughout the term, which is previously determined, or in the next paragraph, 40 years, the owner agrees to use the land or interest in the land or shall cause the land or interest in the land to be limited to rental housing, and the rent for those units not currently occupied or those units which may become unoccupied when the current tenants, as of the date of this declaration, this was 2018, vacate, shall not exceed 30% of 100% AMI level for a 4-person family in the Rocky Hill area, Hartford, West Hartford, East Hartford, CT, HUD, Metro, FMR, fair market rent, as adjusted from time to time by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. If such level is not available, an equivalent successor level shall be promulgated, blah, blah, blah. The owner shall provide to the authority a report on the property annually in substantially the form of Schedule B hereto attached, which is attached. So there is a mechanism that requires the property owner to submit, in this case, to CHFA, their compliance. And it's in effect, if you have an income property in the town of Rocky Hill, you have to submit to the assessor income and expenses that explains the operation of the property. So, I don't think our lawyers have to do a lot. There's just all this language that exists everywhere.
That's great. Thanks, John.
Is there something you wanted to ask our guest this evening, Tom?
No,
'Cause I know you
I'm
meant
good.
to.
I'm gonna give you my personal email and we'll get that sheet.
Yeah, I'll send it out to you. I could send it to Kim. for
Yeah,
you.
I may
Yeah.
even have it.
Yes, I'm sure,
So-
yeah.
Oh, one comment though, I'm
So-
sorry. One comment was about the fund for the affordable housing. Because 6 weeks ago, the ruling by the Supreme Court said that you can only add charges to fees for a property if those charges directly benefit that property, not the community. So I think we'd have to run that by our attorneys.
Yeah, Kim gave 3 or 4 examples of towns that have a special housing fund now, and that
But
they're
I'll-
taking from
I'll bet they're
permits.
older than 6 weeks though.
Yes.
It was only 6 weeks ago the Supreme Court did this.
Was it the state Supreme Court? or
No,
wasn't it
federal. And that's why it's way beyond us. I'm sorry.
Right.
Well, we'll have a discussion on that later this evening.
Oh, okay. That's exciting.
Alright, so, next up is the minutes and actions from the May 2 meeting.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in agreement?
favor?
Aye.
Alright, so next up is next steps for the Rocky Hill Affordable Housing Plan. Charles?
Okay, so
First.
I started to obtain information. I have no formal final information. I'm communicating with the following. Carrie Zepps Woods about the Veterans Home, as is and as proposed. I'm talking to CROG, trying to obtain census data. And the census data is reflective of, I don't know where it is, where have I got my exhibit? In any case, the DOH, here it is. If you can go online, the DOH has affordable housing by town from 2011 to 2023. And the far left column is what they call census units, all the housing in Rocky Hill. And then they break down government-assisted units, tenant rental assistant, single family through CHFA mortgages, and deed-restricted units, and they come up with total assisted units. The total assisted units I call the numerator, and the total housing units I call the denominator. And based upon that mathematical exercise, they claim in 2023 we had 4.68% affordable housing, which is untrue. Okay.
So what's that number again?
4.68. It's wrong. And so my self-anointed task last month was to see, well, where does this information come from? And so let me go through my list. So I've contacted CROG about certain census data, and they're being helpful. I've contacted CHFA about Elms Common. Elms Common is shown in our affordable housing plan of December 2022 as including Elms Common. It's not. It's 155 out of the mathematics that are not there. Now I've confirmed that with CHFA. I've confirmed it with people at Elms Common. It's not good for our numbers, but it may be good for our cause to show how low the affordable housing units are in Rocky Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I've also written to DOH to ask them, well, okay, where did you get these numbers? And I recently received back a response to talk to so-and-so, and I have not yet. Because what's interesting, if you look at these numbers for 13 years, the total census units in Rocky Hill were 8,843 for 12 years, and then in the last year, they're 9,319. It's a big jump, and I don't know where that comes from. So I'm trying to find that out. And then the other numbers, there's some movement, but not really a lot. The number of identified by the Department of Housing, State of Connecticut, assisted units is bumped around 430 plus or minus. So it's hard to understand that. I'm trying to. I've talked to the assessor about different housing in Rocky Hill, whether it's income restricted or not. I spoke with the fire marshal. The fire marshal is involved because they have to inspect group homes. And there are a number of group homes. They're less than there used to be. For example, there's one house, 30 George Road, which is a single family, but it actually has 6 individuals who live there.
By state law, homes for the developmentally disabled, safe houses, people in drug rehab, they all have to be treated like single-family homes.
Treated
So,
what?
as single-family homes by state law. So
Okay,
that's how.
I understand that, but the state law, in my mind, and I'm not the committee here, is imperfect. They're imperfect in what they say about Rocky Hill, and I don't think Rocky Hill's ever gonna produce, through a fund, hundreds of units. But if we can say,
Well,
we're-
I'll get to the legislation that's gonna.
yeah, we're
work on
helping
that.
people in many ways. And speaking with Kerry Wood Zapps, there, in the census definition of housing units, there's moving targets that include group quarters. And that means there might be a common kitchen, and there are assisted living. And if you're in assisted living beyond X number of days, that's considered your residence. I'm just trying to find out, how is Rocky Hill addressing this? So we may gain back some units lost from Elms Common, I don't know. Further, I'm speaking with the Corporation for Independent Living. They said that they didn't have anything in Rocky Hill anymore, but all public records of Rocky Hill show that they still have the 10 units at, not the 10 units there, they have the 30 George is a CIL, but whatever. That's why none of this is final. Elms Common says, yeah, we think there's some kind of 10 units, but we don't know anything about it at the property, can't tell you anything. And what happens when some of these contractors for the state that provide housing for the blind, or someone who has some mental disability that they used to be in some state facility, no one really knows about it, and it's not really available. So what happens is sometimes people will stay there for a very long period of time, and it doesn't help the next group and so on. There's just not enough housing, and I don't know if we'll ever solve that. So I don't have any conclusions, but those are some of the elements that I'm trying to identify. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles.
All right, so next. Great. I think in your packet, you see some of the emails back and forth between some of the folks at CHFA talking about what they can do in terms of education for the town, education for the town council, meeting with us, talking to the town, etc. I think basically where we left it was just, they just wanted to know, they were down for whatever. So they just want to know what we want to do, and they'd be glad to assist, right? Is that pretty much, I don't know if your communication went beyond.
I've talked to our town manager about setting something up for CHFA to come and speak to the town council with a brief presentation. I also think it's a great idea to have CHFA along with DOH come and do more of a public forum with advertising on behalf of this group, to talk about some of the programs that both those agencies offer with respect to affordable housing, with respect to home ownership opportunities, housing opportunities. So there would need to be a fairly lengthy lead time on that. And we'd want to advertise it and publish it in, Rocky Hill Life and Rare Reminder and little flyers, what have you, and get it out to people. But I think DOH should be involved also. It's a state agency, get them involved, CHFA involved. But we're actually looking at either probably a July meeting with the council. So I'm going to try to pin Ray down to a meeting date if I could, for CHFA, and then maybe if maybe both of you could be there, as an introduction, from the Affordable Housing Committee to the council. We'll have to make it a brief, 10, 15-minute presentation with questions. But as far as what's available in Rocky Hill, and they seem very receptive, because I think the council and the manager is very excited about this committee and
Yeah.
happening so far, so.
Because the main point for talking to town leadership was around what CHFA can do in terms of funding for developers and building and what's out there for affordable housing from that side. Less for what's out there for buyers. That's more the education part for talking
Yep.
to, residents.
But I think, so this is, thank you for doing all this legwork, right? I think I agree with you that with CHFA, it's a two kind of things that we need to address, right? Like one is what can they offer to developers for building affordable housing? And then the second thing is, what can they do for home buyers in terms of eligibility, what's required, what doesn't qualify, which is kind of, runs into the educational aspect of, us telling residents who might not know whether they would qualify or not. And I think the DOH, will come in as well from the other side where they can help us, like, okay, if somebody wants to build an affordable housing or a project, how can they help in conjunction with CHFA, which kind of like, the way I'm thinking is like, I have this list of vacant properties around Rocky Hill, right? And we wanna go pitch this to anybody to come develop. You can tell them like, here's DOH, we can help you with these things, use CHFA, we can help you with so and so, and then and then you have the buyer side where CHFA can help, like, get interested people, see what their eligibility would be. So I think, the first meeting when they wanna come to the town council, we can come up with some questions that we can ask them, like how they can help us on both sides. And then, in the meantime, I think I can work with you, Kim, on reaching out to somebody in DOH to find out what they can do. And then, have something like, I definitely think, we should start, before we educate the buyers, if we don't have any inventory, yes, we can educate them, but then they're gonna be like, yeah, where are we gonna go to buy? So ideal situation would be we can get some projects started and then, reach
Yeah,
out
I think
for-
we can get something on the calendar for the town council. We only have to educate the,
Yeah, the
nine
few people.
people to be there. But for the buyer side or the educating for somebody about how they can purchase a home or how a home can be more affordable for them, we want to make sure people actually know that we have an event, actually show up at the event, and we have all our ducks in a row for what we're educating people about. So that could be a few months out,
Right.
that we need more lead time for that.
The other question I had, right, like typically when you are, and some of you have been in planning and zoning, so you probably have a better idea, like how would you approach potential developers to come and, look at these vacant areas and
Typically, it
See
would be
what we
like
can come up
economic
with.
development.
Yeah.
If we had an economic development director, that's kind of what their job would be, to go out and sell the town. For not just, well, it'd be for whatever the town's goals were. So it'd be fill this empty office, it would be develop this big chunk, it would be redevelop this, it'd be come and bring your corporate headquarters here, it would be whatever that thing is. We will have a little bit more manpower to be able to do that. But you really just have to make it as easy as you can, so somebody can come in and not have to do all of that legwork up front.
Right, no, but like first is, how do you even approach them, like, hey, this is our list. This is what you can do on these certain things, and then, basically get them interested in coming here and be interested to develop something.
See, Alan's talking about economic development. We have a planning department, there's two of us in there, but we're the regulators, we're the ones that write the regulations. We're not the ones that can go and court people to come in.
Right.
That's not the job function we have.
And I'm just thinking like,
Yeah.
3 steps, and maybe I'm thinking a little too far, but like say we talk to Jaffa, we talk to DOH, and they have something they can offer, right? What I'm trying to do is concurrently work on this aspect where if they have something really good that they can offer, which can be enticing for developers, then we should have some of them lined up saying, take a look, you know, this is what this is the legwork that we have done, which is gonna help you. And, you know, get them interested in doing something.
I think just somebody has to know somebody. You
Okay.
know, it's a commercial realtor or landowner advertises, and they happen to know somebody that develops these, and then they are kind of connected with CHFA
Okay.
or something like that. Somebody has
So,
to do that.
yeah, that was my question. So we
Somebody
don't
has
have
to
like a
do this.
formal liaison within the town,
Not at the moment.
not at the moment.
I think
Okay.
it's a good idea though, and I think rather than phone calls, I'm having terrible success with phone calls, trying to get people to call me back. I think we should start off with a letter to them saying, this is who we are and this is what we're looking for and who can we talk to? I think that would be one
Do you
thing.
have
The
the
other thing
affordable
is
housing
that
plan?
we're talking CHFA and DOH.
Look at?
But I
Perhaps
have
we
my
could
copy.
also look at
Is it okay that I look at it?
GIs and VA.
Do you have notes all over?
Because I know that
Not
they
this one.
subsidize veterans, especially injured veterans. They subsidize for thousands and thousands of dollars when they want to buy into a home. And I don't know if that, we can then, unless we put something on the deed that would restrict it, I don't know if we can count any of that. But it's still something we can explore to find out what they offer.
Is VA counted in single-family homes?
Well, that's what I know.
No?
No.
USDA.
I don't
does,
think
though.
I think that's what you said for the first.
You,
So
no,
you-
not
you
the
mean-
VA hospital. I mean, if somebody gets a loan on their single-family home and they use VA, is that? No. Could
It's not
USD
income related.
Yeah.
It's, there's a lot of things, strange things about VA loans that can be assumed. So there's more of a
Okay.
market. My 2 cents on the issue, having observed Ames must have closed up 2000, 1990, when
Early 90s.
And the town of Rocky Hill funded economic development outreach in lots of ways. And it was not successful. And part of it, in my opinion, part of it was attributed to the zoning that was on the property. There was an opinion of the town council that they wanted X%, maybe it was 40% commercial and residential, and developers from all over the country came and said, look, we could build apartments, condos, and market them immediately, fill them up immediately, but we cannot on the commercial. It's just the nature of the economy here in Connecticut at the time. And there were many public hearings about different proposals, and there was no lack of effort to identify, to get developers to come. And I think if you read the Connecticut Business, the Hartford Business Journal, Hartford Business Journal has a subsection, real estate. And you can just scan through all the articles that they've written about commercial real estate in the last 1, 5, 10 years. Many developments, like Kelson Row, became reality because they received some kind of financial incentive. In Rocky Hill, it was money for remediation of the site and tax abatement. Cromwell has a development by the same Belfonte, the developers. It was a former missile site, Nike missile site or something. They got assistance in cleaning the site and also the abatement of taxes. In Weathersfield, at the corner of the Silestein and Mill, the town of Weathersfield gave them a tax abatement. So there has to be a combination of things that would persuade a developer that, if the given is it's a good marketplace, and I think Rocky Hill location, there's no doubts. The following of, say, Kelson Row and a few others is very positive, because they're gonna bang the drums to bring people here, and it's easier for the second or third developer to come. A market has been, the market risk is now reduced. And you have to think about, from a developer, he's gonna look at market risk, construction risk, financing risk, and so on. And if you address those kinds of things to make a site in Rocky Hill more desirable, you can do it. And I think that, I've said this before and I'll say it at every meeting, the town council in Rocky Hill, having made a risk with its voters and its taxpayers to give Kelson Row the benefit that they're receiving now and will receive for a period of time. They need now also to say, if state law requires us to develop an affordable housing plan, which they have, and create a committee, which they now have, and the next thing is to maybe have an administrator and then a fund, they have to recognize it's just part of playing the game. And in order to increase affordable housing, the developer's not gonna put too much into. They're looking for someone, in a sense, to subsidize them. And they also, the town wants to avoid a conflict that might put 100 units on a piece next to the liquor store or something. So the present town council seems to have a sense of where they're going, and it's likely they're gonna continue. That's all speculation. But whatever comes out of this committee, I think basically we may draw a different conclusion from what I'm expressing now. But in my opinion, somehow we need to say, okay, yes, here are the parcels that we have. We have certain zoning. When I say zoning,
To that.
the site here, the former Ames, they're permitting structures to be built within 7 feet of the property line, or was it 10 feet? Very, very, and they're also permitting them to build more higher stories than what's typically permitted in this kind of a zone. So combination of the zoning, the tax break, the money to help clean the site up, which came through the town, it was passed through to and so on. That package made that site work after 20 or 30 years of not, because not all those elements existed in the past. If they had, it would have been developed 20 or 30 years ago. That's my 2 cents.
If I could just sum up like this for the start of that, then, if you zone it, they will come. If we have the zoning that will work, I think that's like the first step to, you can go out and try to sell something that nobody wants to buy, and you can spin your wheels and nobody will come. But if you have something, if you change the zoning, like they did for that with the town center district, whatever, the historic district, whatever, they changed the mixed use, things that could be approved there, etc. That's like the first step. You know, we can make recommendations around tax abatements or whatever, but we don't have any control over that, obviously. But that's part of our affordable housing plan, is to review zoning, make recommendations where things could be changed to allow for more affordable housing. Now, it seems like
It's in
that's
effect
kind of-
density. They were permitted
Yes.
to put more units on that land as compared to other places. So there has to be a comparative advantage. that gets the attention of a developer to say, these Rocky Hill sites are better because perhaps of zoning and location, et cetera.
So I'll reach out to you on the DOH, perhaps.
Yeah, I wrote
You
down,
could follow up if you have any contacts at WA or the CIs to see, what they could have.
You get time to get contacts.
and I, with who?
The Veterans Affair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Veterans.
So this way, at least, as you said, I think that's a good point, right? Like zoning is another thing which we could bring up. Like this.
Well, Tom
Town meeting,
has,
like, hey,
that's,
So that's part of the plan of conservation and development, which will be coming. That'll be completed next year. It's be started this summer. That'll be a look at a lot of
Yeah.
zoning stuff.
New one?
Yeah. I'm
When,
sorry.
when Tom's thing with planning and zoning, I mean, obviously, I'm more immersed in planning and zoning than anyone at this table, though others have been on the commission or been before the commission, but, I will definitely jump in. I'm not afraid to do that, so. But, concerning the, CHFA and DOH, I will get a possible meeting date for that.
Yeah.
And we'll reach out to
I think that's-
CHFA for the council part of it.
Yep.
And then the longer term is DOH, maybe the Fair Housing Center also, Aaron Temple at Fair Housing,
That would be great.
possibly also.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we could, yeah.
And maybe make it
I
a
think we should
regional
get-
thing and reach out to other towns too, and other towns, other staff. 'cause
Yeah,
it's-
if anybody else, I mean, we've got the facility, let's show it off.
One of the things it says here in the Affordable Housing Plan, number 5, increase other state-recognized units, that's CHFA. It says that number 4, seek to align with banks located in Rocky Hill to help them meet their Community Reinvestment Act obligations.
Nutmeg.
Yep,
Nutmeg
So-
is headquartered in Rocky Hill.
That's something I guess somebody
yeah.
could
we-
pursue.
I mean, keep in mind, this is their third meeting, so.
No, I understand.
Yeah, I mean-
Oh,
Yeah.
just
I think we're
adding,
doing pretty good.
adding on
Yeah.
to the thought process.
In just a question mainly to the real estate agents, who are the banks that are most likely to have a real estate agent go to or refer a client to for this area?
For this, I don't know about for this area, but I can tell you for Chaffa, specifically for affordable housing loans, if you go on Chaffa's website, it'll tell you the banks that do the most Chaffa loans. And it is, I think, there's one that starts with an N, it's like Northeast something, maybe. And then there is First World Mortgage, Total Mortgage, Liberty Bank, Norcom, that's what it was, Norcom.
Yeah.
There's, if you go down the list, Chaffa publishes the banks that do the most CHFA loans.
Are they bundling them right away and selling them off? Or they're holding them in out?
I don't know, honestly, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. They process, those companies they have a running total of who does the most, and they rank
Right.
them. And they have certain ones that are designated underwriters and all that
Yeah.
stuff. So that might, I mean, Liberty Bank's headquartered in Middletown, and what's it called, the Community Reinvestment?
It's a Reinvestment Act,
So that requires.
Community
them-
Reinvestment Act.
Yeah, so that banks are like required to spend a certain amount of money back into the communities that they serve. And a lot of banks, like the big ones, your Bank of America's, your Fargo's, those ones they buy into these programs like NACA that are like super low interest rate. If the going rate now is like 7, their rate's like 5.
Yeah. What is NACA?
I forget what it stands for, but it's like,
That's where I'll look at it.
yeah,
I had the same question.
Yeah.
yeah, it's NACA, and it's, for first-time home buyers with like little to no money down, you have to take a bunch of classes, and then you have to volunteer back to educate other people that use NACA. And you basically buy, it's like $1,000 down. The whole thing is financed at a super, like, below market rate. And it was a bigger thing. It is tougher now in the current market because most sellers will just go take cash or something. You know, they'll just take a different loan.
I'm not an expert on the mortgages, but there are things like the time to own.
Yeah, under
Yeah.
CHFA. And there's
Under CHFA,
numbers for
that's a
who's.
huge one.
That's a really good
How
one
does
for us to later promote.
It gives incentive, and I'm not the attorney.
None of us are
But yeah,
perfect.
but it gives incentive, to get additional funding that you'll get back as part of it. You might explain?
Yeah, I'm pretty familiar with it. So,
Yeah,
it's-
go ahead.
so depending on
borrowing
the,
Buy
it down?
into it, but then you get benefits as
Okay.
it goes on.
well, so it's a forgivable,
Thank you.
additional forgivable loan for down payment. So depending on your census tract, you qualify for, and your income has to qualify.
Yeah, yeah.
And the home can't be above a certain price.
Right. All sorts of rules.
There's a lot of
Fingers
rules.
out is good.
In Rocky Hill, we have both amounts. You can, it's either $25,000 or $50,000. The west side of town, you can get up to $50,000 for down payment assistance. That if you live in that house for 10 years, you never have to pay back. And it goes towards closing costs, it goes towards the down payment. You can essentially move in, if you're getting that $50,000, you can move in, have little to no closing costs, and pay equity into the house. So you're moving in, and instead of doing the bare minimum at like 3.5% that you would have on like an FHA loan, you could move in and have 15% equity in the house from day one. What that means is you cannot have private mortgage insurance if you put additional money down or something like that. And it's an amazing program, and it's been well funded. Last year, the state funded 2 years worth of it. They said, here's $200 million or something like that. But not everybody qualifies for it. You have to kind of fit in a narrow window. You have to have a certain amount of debt. Your income has to be below a certain level, all those things. But that's one of the things that would absolutely be highlighted by CHFA if they came and educated potential home buyers that this is something that's available out there. Because they have, you know, a lot of lenders and a lot of realtors have spent a lot of time talking about it, but still not everybody knows that it's out there, and it's
What's the name of the program again?
time
Time
to
to own.
own.
Time to
If you
own.
Google CHFA time to own, you'll go right
Yeah,
there.
it has a lot of criteria, but it's good, and it
Yes.
gives stability, because people need to have
In
it
it-
for
yeah.
a certain idea.
You have, you know, you have to be at AMI income levels and
Yeah.
debt to income. There's a lot, you need a mortgage
You need a
professional to
mortgage
really
person,
like
yeah.
run your numbers and see if you qualify and all that stuff, but
Years ago.
it's an amazing program.
Years ago, the town did small cities block grants to
Mhm.
help
Similar.
with that type of thing.
Yeah.
For closing cost assistance, for down payment
Yeah.
assistance, or whatever, for income qualified individuals, so, yeah. It was, I mean, small cities block grants is a real pain in the butt as far as administrative stuff goes, and keeping track of that, but it helped a lot of families at the time, so. Sounds similar too.
Yeah.
It's great. I would tell anybody to Google it. If you know somebody buying
Yeah.
a first home, they have to be a Connecticut resident, they have to have lived here for 2 years. Also, if you're a teacher, you get an additional quarter of a point off. Also, if you're in a certain census district, you can get another quarter of a point off your loan. There's a lot of stuff in there for CHF.
Something. Hopefully they talk about it, I'm sure they will.
All right, so good. We have a action step now for
Yep, first step.
for that.
Yeah, so I'll reach out, as I said, I'll reach out and get dates for possible meetings so we can kind of, peg CHFA.
Well, you know, summer's a little light for
Yeah.
stuff's going on, so
Yep.
we can
So
slide into a meeting.
we'll come up with a forum date once we get the people on board.
Sounds like
How
they're very
often
open
does the
to
town
it.
council meet? Twice a month, once a month?
Until the summer, I think the summer they're gonna be doing one meeting a month.
Okay.
but that's fine.
Gotcha.
But the CHFA was
Yeah.
very willing to come in. They said,
Yeah.
yeah, where do you want us to show
Yeah.
up? So,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
So-
that email sounded really excited, so.
Yeah.
there we go.
Alright, next is, I think Rebecca's,
Rebecca's not here, but I did talk to Susan Moores. She's the executive director of the Housing Authority. And I know they have received money through a grant. They're rehabbing some of their units to create more accessible units. All their units are income dependent, it's age restricted, and for people with disabilities. So they're rehabbing some more units for people with, for handicap accessibility purposes. They also have a grant to do a feasibility study on the excess land that they have as far as building more units. So I had a conversation with them about, have you thought about actually, and this would take, some initial money, but relocating people in one of the developments. You have 2 developments, 70 units total. Would you be willing to relocate people in one development for a period of time while a structure is actually built, a multi-story structure with handicap accessibility with elevators? Once that's occupiable, move the people from the other development into that, relocate the people back there, and then build another multi-story building at the other site. So we can probably double the capacity, because the waiting list is always lengthy at any of the housing authority-like properties around the greater Harvard area. So we talked about that, and she said, well, that's gonna take a lot of money. I said, well, I know that, and there's money out there.
So
We
we're
know
expecting
it's
you to
gonna-
pay for it.
We know it's gonna take money, but is this something that you think would be doable and looked upon favorably? I mean, that's,
This is what he suggests in the affordable housing plan.
Yeah.
Right?
Let's work that way, We take, and they've been taking and getting block grants and other grants to rehab units that are there, but they really need more units.
yes.
And does it make sense to build 2 or 3 more units? That's.
So you
think
said
a
they have
little more.
70 units, and then on
They
the
have 70
addition,
units in 2 developments.
and then the additional land has capacity for how many units?
That's what they have a
Yes.
grant to study that
Study that,
right
okay.
now. But they're building single-story detached units. That's what they're building, that's what they have.
And they're building more of those there?
That's what they're looking at.
Yeah,
And
I-
I'm saying,
I'll make
no.
a suggestion.
No,
I'll make a suggestion that probably not gonna go anywhere, but I'll vent it out of my
no
system.
caveats,
Go
just
for
say
it.
it, just say it.
Go
Charlie.
ahead.
Okay, so in traditional economic theory, there was land laboring capital. Okay,
Mhm.
if you take Econ 1, you start somewhere there. And more recently, I discovered they added a 4th, entrepreneurial intelligence. The town of Rocky Hill currently has a developer that recently got approval for additional units. And the town of Rocky Hill, and you can use whatever verb you want, granted, permitted a tax abatement, which is a mathematical thing you could calculate, but you could argue about the assumptions. I would suggest to the Rocky Hill Housing Authority that they take either $0 or their grant money and go and have the mayor and the town councilman who approved the tax abatement deal and say, Michael Belfonte, we would like your entrepreneurial talent to look at this issue that we have. You're now building in Rocky Hill. What would it take? What zoning change do you need for those parcels? It's where a school is. Maybe they could have reduced frontages, higher structures, and so on. And there's also a former public housing nearby, not the most attractive thing, but the people live there. And say, what do you advise us to do? I think that would have the greatest benefit or fruit to the town, and it certainly would have fairly reasonable reliability, because if you walk out here, either listen, you hear, or you drive by, you can see people doing things. Every day, we who walk by see the progress. They're clearly people who know what they're doing. They do work, they get CHFA housing money and mortgages, they do work with CHFA properties. Rather than someone to muck around and say, okay, we have a grant, now what do we do?
Keep in mind, we weren't involved with any of that, so.
I understand.
That's how I found out about this
But
grant.
in our
Her telling
third
me.
formal meeting here, I suggest that the greatest benefit to the potential for affordable housing and the improvement of that specific site would be somehow to get the Belfonte organization to give us some time. Not necessarily capital, but some time. And they may advise, they may say, no, we can't do it, we're busy doing what we're doing. Or they can say, talk to this person, we know that they can help you. That's it.
I think that's a great idea.
Talk to the people who know how to do it.
Yeah, when it's my turn, I'll follow up on that.
Go ahead. I'm done.
Okay, but that was the conversation I had with the executive director, because I think they need to look at more than a few units and keep renovating what they have. I do think because of the need, and it's not just need in our town, it's a need everywhere, that they need to think bigger, so.
How much area do they have, excess area?
I
It
don't
might
know,
be
I
on-
haven't.
Where's the map?
I haven't looked at it. I mean, we have a map here that I was gonna take out when we get to,
It's inefficient.
it's extremely inefficient.
I think that the woods that are south of that property are owned by the town.
I don't wanna take
Right.
your-
No, there's a part that's being sold off. Some of it is, yes.
Yeah, I mean, they have, where are we here? They have a housing authority up on School Street,
You can't tell.
and they have some property past, there's an easement, they have some property past that, and they have a lot of property down on Willow Road as well. So,
Certainly.
I don't know what the acreage is.
By,
Yeah, but
That's something.
what I was trying to get to is, if it's big enough, that gives them the ability to build a high rise, which is accessible, but add a lot more units than they would otherwise.
Yeah, but I mean, there will have to be some relocation.
they could go to
Well-
two stories,
They will.
3 stories.
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
Immediately,
yeah.
you're going
Yeah,
to
they
yield
would-
more.
Yes, and that makes sense, because we have underutilized, for example, we have underutilized hotels in town.
But
That could be
Also
used
has
as
to
relocation.
Remember, when you add units, you
And-
need parking space as well.
Correct.
So.
It would still be cost effective in many ways, because all the grass trimming and hedges, and plants, you're still on the same footprint of building, same parking lot. Once you establish it, then we don't have to do independent buildings here and there, and it's a lot more cost for us to maintain it.
It may be.
Well, I think for the renovations for the housing authority now, I think we're already too far along with renovating the one-story units to really, I mean, they haven't started it, but they've already applied for the grant and done the
No,
architectural.
they already have,
They're
they
way
already
off,
have,
yeah.
That's-
they already have that grant.
Yeah, that's
But-
all.
For one property,
two,
not
yeah.
two properties.
Yeah.
But I
not
do
the other ones,
still
right.
think, and who knows, maybe we want to present in front of the housing authority, the board itself, and talk to them. And go to their meeting.
That's why I asked,
But
how much
also-
property they have, because that could potentially take care of with parking or, the open space that is needed.
I
But
think there's
at the
enough
same
space
time,
over there to
add,
do a little bit more parking. I think that's-
add more apartments or houses, not houses, but apartment or living space than they would otherwise.
The other thing about those units that I recall, and I could be wrong, is they're very small. They're like 500 square feet.
Right.
So it's not
Studio.
hard to increase the number of units. Some of the people there are elderly. I know someone who was approved to live there but had 4 children, and I just said, this is never gonna happen. But elderly or single, and that's basically what Vessel is building. Their 1-bedrooms, I think, are about 500
You have
square
1 or
foot.
2 bedroom units over at the housing authority.
Yeah.
Where's that?
Hinkle Road.
Oh, okay.
The Vessel is on Finkel, yeah. So adding more it's different than a 2 or 3 bedroom unit where maybe there's a husband and wife or 2 spouses or whatever they're called today would have 2 cars. That's not gonna be necessarily true on Murphy Road and School Street.
So, Kim, are you communicating with them about that then, or is
Well,
it somebody from this commission?
Well, I had put a call in to Susan Moore's because I'm saying, you know, I heard about the grant to renovate
Right.
units
Right.
for handicap accessible units.
Right.
And that's when she told me they got a grant for like $55,000 to look at the extra land. And I said, have you thought about?
Yeah,
thought
holding
about
off
this?
on the
Have
million
you thought
and-
about
and-
this?
Right?
You know, so.
Is this commission, right here it says leaders and partners are staff,
Mhm.
Affordable Housing Commission, and or committee, and the Rocky Hill Housing Authority.
Yeah.
So you're well within your bounds to communicate with these folks, somebody here.
Yeah, the Housing Authority is in a sense an independent
Yeah, they are.
group of people. And I think we can only suggest and recommend, and they may feel, look, we've been on our own for 40 years, however long we've been there, and we've struggled. The town helps a little bit. The town cuts the grass, I think, and plows the snow. It's a tough situation. I would hope perhaps, I don't know what bylaws that the Rocky Hill Housing Authority operates under, that somehow we need to do more better than we have up until this point. And now that this committee is moving forward, is it part of our concern, or are we really crossing the line into something that's
No,
mutually
it's
Nothing,
exclusive?
no harm
It's
in
not-
making a suggestion, right? And
It's
I
not
think-
crossing the line, it's right in here. It's in the Affordable Housing
in
Plan to do what she said. This,
Expanding
right?
the housing authority.
To expand, right.
So we're
to-
gonna send Kim down there. Go ahead, Kim.
Well,
Take care
it
of
says,
I'm good.
the leaders.
I'm good.
Well, Kim then talks with also
Yeah.
Rebecca, who's part of the
Yeah.
committee, just
Right.
doesn't happen to be here right now.
Okay, there you go.
Is at the
Yeah.
housing authority, you
Yeah.
know, it's there, so. That can be a 3-way email.
I think it's worth trying.
Absolutely.
Jen, you are up next.
Trying.
Okay, so, I was following up with some towns that were previously identified as having made some headway. Madison, East Hartford, Salisbury or Salisbury, or whatever that one is. Excuse me. There were 5 in total. The one that, was very interesting was, Salisbury. Do you guys know how to pronounce that?
Salisbury.
That sounds right, sounds
Yeah,
right.
okay. They are unique because that part of the state, they have, you know, there's Kent, there's Washington, there's Cornwall, there are a lot of little towns, and they're kind of all falling under that umbrella. They actually have, I watched it, it's a 10-minute video promoting affordable housing. And they're very advanced, actually. They're very advanced. Very advanced. They have a lot of developments. They have names, just like we have Kelsey's Row or whatever. Like, they actually have names to make it sound very quaint, very much part of the community. and they don't have a lot of people living in each building. So it's more like it just gets so well assimilated into the area. I mean, that was a visual for me to kind of see it like that. One of the things that they also talked about was they get funding a lot from state and federal, and you know, my next point is talking about some of that. But the thing that they also said, and given that part of the state, there's a lot of land, and they've been able to get land as a contribution to the process, as opposed to, I know we don't have that large capability of land, but that was something that they were blessed with that, you know, is taking a lot of financial resources that they don't have to provide for in order to get this building done. So that's a luxury that they have that we don't. To my knowledge, I don't know if we have people that have a lot of land that would have enough to zone and develop on and fit into the neighborhood. But that's one thing other areas are tapping into. I did include, and thank you, Kim, you put it in the information that was sent out. The original one I had wasn't really clear, so I printed it again. It's just the Department of Housing process, and in what I had included in Kim's packet, the timeframes for applying for aid through the DEP process are spring and fall. Like, I want to say it was May, so I mean, we weren't ready for that. There's just a lot to be done. So what we need to do, and I have no problem continuing to lead on that, is to find out what has to happen. Because the next one, I think it's September, October, November, it's later in the year, and there's just so much that you could do to prepare for that. I don't think we're gonna have enough time or resources to put anything together. I'm just trying to be candid, but I think I'd like to take this further and delve more into what these steps are.
When you say preparing, applying for funding for what?
Well, according to this thing here, it was for the project. Some projects are gonna be declined, some are gonna be approved. Now, what the scope of a project is in these little boxes here that I would need to delve into further. You know, it basically starts by saying that Department of Housing notifies that there are requirements and instructions how to put together preliminary applications. So obviously we'd have to figure out what are we gonna apply for. And then you have to, it gets sent on to the CHAFA as well as Department of Housing. And they have an early decline and follow-up steps, so we could get pushed right out after that. And then it ends up going to determination of funding and then results and next steps. This is very aggressive. This is really down the road for us, I think, but I'll be happy to do more research on it, and it's something that we need to be aware that's happening. It's, I would have liked if it was like a rolling review instead of this like twice a year, because, you know, if you just found out about it, like I did in May, you know, that limits the time.
One thing I would ask is, like, to me, this one seems more like, you know, a developer who is ready to start a project and applying for a grant versus
Yeah, that's what this is.
us as
Yes.
a committee, like, looking for a grant to
Right.
do something.
Right, I agree.
Um,
I want to probe that further, but
Well-
that's my understanding as well.
Well, I think with this form that we hope to have, I think DOH may bring out some of this stuff to
Yeah.
light.
It's a gray area, at least for me.
Yeah, because it shows on the other side of the page.
Yeah.
It's for developers.
Yeah, and a lot of what I gathered, specifically when talking about Norwalk, a lot of what they're doing there, it's building. It's not like finding this little parcel and let's add 2 apartments to it or something like that. They're going gung-ho and developing. Easier said than done. They must obviously have the space and other resources, but that's a big way things are being done.
Yeah, because this one says DOA Chaffa reviewed the submission,
Yes.
so I believe this is some kind of elaborated process, right? when
I'm
we
sure you're right, yeah.
Review and issue grants.
Yeah. There was also, something, one of the towns I talked to, they had some, religious groups or some, I'm just gonna go with religious, that over time for, the benefit of the community, they were putting houses together. I mean, they still exist, and a lot of times you'll see them in cities, and that was like a grassroots effort to find housing, and they said they're seeing, there is some of that going on, that affordable housing, the term affordable housing is being used to kind of assimilate that information, make things more formal. So these are more like buzzwords.
There's a group,
Do you know what I'm
I belong
referring
to Central Baptist Church in Hartford.
Yeah.
And Sheldon Oaks Central has a board. I used to be on the board of directors there. Now I passed that on to my father. So, where they actually work with an executive director, and they go out to RFP and
Yep.
RFQ to take over rundown areas
Yep.
or buildings, and they create
Affordable housing.
affordable housing.
Right.
A lot of it's been sweat equity, some sweat equity programs or whatever, and so, yeah. I don't know if some of the churches here would do that, but I can think of a few in town that have a lot of community outreach
Right.
entities or groups that go out and do things in the town, and I could certainly reach out
Yeah.
to them.
Can't hurt, yeah.
Oh, Have you, did you look into as far as anything to do with the affordable housing funds, as far as ways that the funds are actually funded? I mean, yes, we're talking about building permit fees with the town council. Take a look at that with,
Yep.
I mean, planning and zoning applications are few and far between, but
Right.
yeah, we can still take a
Sure.
look at percentage of the fees.
Yep.
What about seed money? Would the town council during a budget process say, okay, we're gonna take X amount of dollars and put it into
I don't
the
have
fund
any
as
information on that.
seed money?
Yeah.
Or can we tack on, are we able to legally tack on a fee to applications? Can we do that? I don't know.
I don't know that either. I can look into
Okay,
it.
and I will.
So you want that to know as part of,
Yeah.
That is on the town council and the town manager to set up that special housing fund.
Yep.
and one more thing, Salisbury has, they're very, very formal. They have a chairman, they have a housing trust, they have a housing committee, and they have a affordable housing committee. So they're like, when I was looking at towns, this one has really got its act together, at least on paper, or, you know, what I'm reading, so,
And what's their percentage of affordable housing, you know?
yeah, that I don't know, but they're not that, you know,
To me, that sounds
They have
like
a lot of
a lot of
land.
bureaucracy.
yeah, I,
They got the
they're,
paperwork
No,
done.
but
they're very small towns.
There's an entity to own the housing, that would be the trust. And
Yeah.
there's the
There's
committee
the
is
committee.
parallel to us
Yeah.
with state statute.
But they have a, affordable housing committee, which is more like what we do. They have,
Right.
in between the trust and us, is the housing committee. So it seems like an extra layer there that, I didn't look at the charter of each of them.
I
I'll
would
reach out to them
just,
as well. I'll reach out to them too.
Okay,
going back to this thing here,
yes,
there was a part of CHFA I was never really involved with, and that was the selection by CHFA of what properties would be funded. And you have to think about it as there's a huge number of developers in many towns attempting to get CHFA approval and allocation of funds. And CHFA used to control federal funds and so on. They were the administrator. And they have I believe, a coefficient system in which they determine, based on certain, I think, policy decisions of CHFA or the state government and the federal government, how they're going to distribute the limited funds they have. And obviously, there's an absence of affordable housing, and a lot of that has to do with the absence of capital to finance it. And a lot of the affordable housing that's built is done with single-purpose limited partnerships in which they sell the tax benefits to high-income people. They're called housing credits. I think it would be worthwhile if someone from CHFA could tell us, okay, what programs may work. And for example, I think it was Weston, or one of the communities between us and Stamford, in which it was stated, okay, housing's expensive in this town. We want our teachers and our policemen and our firemen to be able to live in the community, to service the community. So it's like workforce housing and so on. There are all these different varieties, and they may say, okay, Rocky Hill, you've now just told us you only have 2% affordable housing. You need to have, then you may somehow fit in to a formula need and a funding supply that they have at a certain point in time. And I could be entirely wrong, but I think it's worthwhile trying to get someone from CHFA to say, this is how this works, because this is extremely complicated. And in dealing with CHFA, if you went on their website, they have a series of documents that developers are supposed to complete and so on, and literally thousands of pages of information about what would be the building specs, what would be the materials, how would you decide who lives there. It's complex, but it becomes rewarding to the developer. The developer's permitted an overhead and a profit that might be 40%. It's very lucrative. Once you get into CHFA's method of doing things. Now, Kim, we used to have a developer in town, Wynn. Do they still own that stuff on Brook Street?
Win Stanley, I don't.
They were
So-
big CHFA
Yeah.
residential housing developers.
Yeah. Up and down 91, yeah.
Yeah, and they got into some snit about a property across the street,
Yeah.
I think, and said, all right, we're not gonna do anything here. But again, that's the entrepreneurial source. And my own background before I moved here, 55 years ago, I worked for a real estate developer in Boston. And basically there's a familiarity that's developed, or a relationship with a housing authority and a developer, and they both sort of understand what the process, and it moves smoothly. It's not an easy thing for a new developer to break in and just show up at CHFA, because you have to have the stamina to stick with a very, very long process. And if you looked across the state of Connecticut, there's probably dozen or 20 developers that get the bulk of the money that CHFA allocates in whatever their fiscal year is. So I think it would be helpful if someone in one of those CHFA presentations is able to tell us, is there a likelihood that a developer will do it under what program in Rocky Hill?
Salisbury's 1.54%.
Oh, you beat me to it.
And Salisbury,
That's,
And how many units is that?
they also have a commission.
23.
oh my God, that's the way this is all.
I don't know how many units.
Yeah,
You're right.
I think their total units were 2,300.
yeah. They have a commission
Oh my
that's
God.
appointed by
You
the
were
Board of
looking.
Selectmen
Oh my
that
God.
work with two nonprofits. Those other two entities are nonprofits that they work with.
It's that whole, look at
So
all these
that's-
committees
Oh,
that we've made
Yeah, that's
to do
more,
nothing.
yeah. So
Oh
they
my
work
God.
with nonprofits that are their go-to people.
And then also,
Okay, so it looks better on paper than it does in real
Yeah,
life.
so they have a committee like this, appointed by the
Yeah.
Board of Selectmen. And then this committee would in turn work with two other, the trust is a nonprofit entity, separate, and then the Affordable Housing
Yeah,
Committee that actually builds the units, so,
And they all meet once every 6 months?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm interested in seeing the video, though.
yeah.
I think videos
The video is
really-
are, you know, it says to educate the public. I'm willing to put together a video.
This one's 9
For
minutes
this
and
group.
55 seconds. If
I'll
I
share
send
with
We
you.
have that on tape.
Huh?
We have that on tape.
It's okay.
I know, I know.
But I'd like to send you this link if you want to share it with people.
Yep, well, send it by email, by all
Yep.
means.
And
And
so-
I would ask anybody, because, I mean, you are an appointed board by ordinance, so if you have anything you want to share with others on the committee, it has to come through me, and then I in turn will get it out to people. I mean, I was deluged with correspondence from everybody, so I don't know if I got everything out to everyone, but, I really like that people are doing this and getting information out, but if you have any other information, by all means, send it on to me.
Right, Tom?
Okay, well, first thing, Ken, believe me, I wasn't trying to go around you, P and Z.
Oh,
Yeah, okay. And I know it doesn't matter to you, but that's.
Not a problem
you need to
there.
know. What I wanted to do was find out, I want to be able to sit down and ask questions to find out what type of affordable housing would be most likely to pass P and Z or to be zoned correctly. I want to learn the process, and that's what that whole conversation would be about. I don't know whether small houses are going to be acceptable and how we can put them in, or I don't know if high rises, or I don't know what's going to be the most acceptable for this town and our community.
We no longer have, years ago, we had a square footage limit in our regulations. The courts-
1,250.
Yeah, that was insane. But that has been removed. There's new legislation that the commission, planning and zoning, when I say the commission, has the ability to write a regulation and include duplexes, triplexes, and like clusters of housing in residential, commercial, and mixed-use zones as of right. This is something, it's new, I sat in on a webinar for a council on small towns, and I gave people the presentation. But one of the things was to do what's called middle housing as of right. The commission would have to put forth a regulation. And if they do that, that will lend itself to points on a moratorium against 830G projects coming in. I don't know that the commission wants to eliminate 830G projects coming in. We've only had one. The legislation's been in effect since 1989, and we've had one application.
Two.
Or two, yeah, technically, right.
Well, two applications, but
Yeah.
One developer.
One
developer, right.
one project. But I do think the commission would take up middle housing as a discussion and possibly a regulation. I know we've modified our accessory apartment regulations to allow for, to comply with the state where it's 30% of the unit is now considered, you can have an accessory dwelling up to 30% of the unit. You can also have a detached accessory dwelling on your property that kind of takes into account the tiny houses that they have that are actually quite lovely, but very small. I grew up in town in a 900 square foot home, and it was fine. you don't necessarily have to build,
I don't think that really qualifies as a tiny house, though.
no,
Have
but
you
I
seen
mean,
these tiny houses?
yeah, but I mean,
250 square feet.
yeah, I mean, but I grew up in a much
Yeah.
smaller home that they build than they build nowadays. So I do think the commission is very open, and I know when people come in to talk to me about projects, I always mention affordable housing, and we've gotten units approved without anything being in place even. And the commission, I tell them, you know, I'm bringing it up here because the commission will bring it up at the table. So they are very receptive.
And putting in the accessory, the tiny house or whatever, you're still restricted to the percent of land being used, correct?
As of this point in time, yes.
How is
That may
that,
change.
how is
Okay.
that?
Sorry, go ahead.
How is that getting communicated? Like, now they have made these changes so that there's more availability, if you will. But I'm hearing it from you, like, I never hear that outside of, and that's big news.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't know that it's big news. It's been around a long time. So we've had these regulations in place for a while.
But I don't see stuff being built that would use that. You
I
just-
can't,
yeah.
you know, it's up to people out there if they
Yeah.
want to do it.
Right.
We've had a lot of
But I
requests
didn't
through
even
the
know it was an
years,
option, I guess
but
is what I'm saying.
We've had a lot of requests through the years. A lot of times it's caregiving units, when you talk about the tiny houses.
Yeah.
It's,
Right.
you know, I either want to bring, you know, my family member there to live, but not necessarily in my home, or I want, you know, my family member to be in my house, but a
Right.
caregiver to be on the premises,
Yep.
so, but we've had people ask through the years whether or not they do it. We
Does
can't.
anyone know anyone that has a tiny house in town?
I know people in other towns that have.
Yeah,
I
but,
know people in other towns that have.
You're talking about detached accessory
Yes.
units.
yeah.
I know
mean, if
of,
it's
I
an
know of a
option.
detached accessory unit, I know of one that's been on Elm Street for years.
I know one on
Years.
Old Main.
Years. Yeah, I do too. I happen to, yeah.
I think your idea of writing a letter to Belfonte, I think it's a great idea. I'd like to talk with you, and I'll start a draft, and we can bounce it back and forth. And
You may want to leave mine, I'll help you, but you may want to leave my
No.
name out at the end.
I think
We
it's,
can, we can
I think,
submit it as a board,
I mean-
if we approve.
Right.
I'm sorry.
I mean, I'm in touch with them all the time.
Mhm.
But again, I just think what we're talking about demands knowledge, energy, experience, and you could not get a better example
Mhm.
of it right nearby, because they're benefiting from, in a sense, a state contribution via the town. They got reduced taxes during a period. They're doing commercial, but they were permitted in the final town council approval, not the planning and zoning, town council approval of the tax abatement. They had the ability to hold off on the commercial until they identified a tenant. So it's not speculative, so it reduces the financing risk. It makes it easier for them to get financing. It's a microcosm of really an optimal bunch of characteristics coming together. And they're doing this in other places. They did it in Cromwell. I know of they took over a CHFA property in Ellington. They've got scars, they're not perfect, but they're veterans of dealing with all of these components, and they know what's gonna work in the market. They got a loan from Liberty for a large amount to do it. So, in a sense, in my opinion, they owe the town something. It doesn't have to be money. But I think that they're good people, in that I don't blame them for getting the tax abatement. I may blame other people, which we're not gonna get into. But I think that it's good PR for them, And they may be able to drag Liberty Bank in, who has a branch in Rocky Hill
Yes, they
near
do.
Aldi's, right?
They do.
In that, if they have a Community Reinvestment Act issue, it just is a confluence of potential that it's worth trying. And I agree.
Why don't, I mean, I have a pretty decent relationship with them and others, town manager, what have you. Why don't I, if that's okay, reach out?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I think
Ask them if
just
they'd
to
be
open
interested
up-
to provide feedback.
Just
or-
open up the dialogue.
In my remaining
You don't
years
need to-
here in Rocky Hill, I think that to be thinking passively that someone will come here and say, well, I'm gonna develop some affordable housing there and you don't have to give me anything, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even if
And
we cross our fingers, it's not gonna happen.
And what do we lose by making a bold ask to say, help us? And it may be multiple things. It may be the School Street and Murphy Road, and that may already have gone down a path that's not reversible. But there are other parcels they could help us on. And for example, on that specific site, initially the town of Rocky Hill was to have received 2 little pocket parks, and the town, for whatever reason, said, no, we really don't want them. And they'll be incorporated in the landscape, they are incorporated in the landscape.
No,
You're talking about Kelson
They
Road?
should be
Yeah.
in there.
they're there.
But we're not getting them as parks.
We're getting one, not
Well,
the
there-
other one.
There's
But
not
we
going to
weren't
be
getting
in
the other one.
the name of the town of Rocky Hill.
Or for
I
the
don't
general
think they ever
public.
promised that.
Yeah,
One's
they
for
did.
the
Yeah, they
general
did.
General
public,
public.
Yeah,
and
they
one
said-
is,
I know
one
they
is
promised
not.
it to the
Yeah.
park
Yeah.
area.
But the point is we've been good to them, it's worth asking them to be good to us.
I agree. Agree.
Nothing wrong with that.
Part of the direction that I've been going, since we're a brand-new board and nobody's pulled the reins in on me yet, I'm thinking longer term. If I was the developer or I was the town, I'd want to make it as profitable as possible for the developer to come in and give us affordable housing. So I'm thinking that the state owns land, and I'm trying to think of a way to get the state to give us the land. And one short conversation I had with Dimple was that the 2 ways to approach the state to get land from them, to have them give us land, is either go to through the legislative route or go to the department. And along the highway, we have the Transportation Department owns significant land. And I noticed on this map that there's one piece of 6.4 acres that the town, they already gave the town 6.4 acres.
They
right there.
divided that off, there's
Yep.
been a subdivision done. The DOT is retaining some of it, and
Yep.
they'd be willing to give the town the
That's
rest.
the Sir Willow.
So I went,
Yeah.
I went up, yes, absolutely.
Yep.
This piece right here is what I was looking
291.
at.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I
Yeah.
went up and I drove to it, and there's a
Right across
significant
from
drop
Maxwell
off.
Park, and,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's
Significant drop.
wetlands, and there's
Yep.
construction costs.
So I drove to the other place, which is off of Route 3, and that's a beautiful piece of property. I don't know how many acres, because I can't read this. It's too tiny.
That's the place that they subdivided, that's the 291 ramp,
Right.
yeah,
There's a lot of
yeah.
property in there that I was thinking, geez, if we can find a way to ask the state and get the state to give it to the town, what would be the next step? Well, then we could long-term lease it to a company, a corporation, that would build what we want and have significant affordable housing. Is it practical? It's
Sure.
just an idea at this point.
Yeah, under state statutes, my understanding that when either a utility or the state of Connecticut disposes of excess land or whatever they describe it as, the first offer is to a utility and/or the municipality that the land resides in. And that's how what's the development, there's at at the southeast corner of Route 3 and West Street, that was excess electric company land. And the town of Rocky Hills Economic Development Entity, which I was on at the time, a deal was made and that's how it worked, and there's lots of other details about it, but there is a vehicle that addresses the likelihood of that happening. What they receive as compensation, I'm not sure whether that has to be done by an appraisal or it may or may not, but it's public policy of the state of Connecticut to have more affordable housing. Theoretically, Carrie Zepp's would be useful in some way in breaking somebody's leg.
Carrie, I know, has talked to the town about the I-291 right away in the past, so that would be the person to talk to.
Sure.
Carrie Wood, I know, was involved.
Okay, I'll open a conversation with her about it and report back to everyone.
Sounds good.
All right. And I know this is long-term stuff, but
That's a
we
big
have to
part
start
of land.
somewhere.
That's okay.
That's
That's
a
a big
big
chunk.
chunk, I know.
Kim, what is or Ed, the plan of development? Who owns the sand pits now? Does the town own the sand pits?
The town has some, and then it was Russo, but Russo sold
To someone? No?
to someone else. I don't happen to know off
Okay.
the top of my
But
head.
you're familiar with you bring your leaves, right?
Yes, oh yes.
So there's,
Keep in mind, we have a solar farm, a 15-acre solar farm.
Right.
well, I understand that, but still there is a fair amount of land there as well.
That's correct.
And I don't know if we have access via Cromwell.
No, there's a considerable grade difference.
Yeah, but it's not inconceivable that they're going to put a new bridge in at, what's the brook?
Oh, there's a study, I think, to put a new bridge in.
Yeah.
There's
No,
not-
I-
there's no funding, I don't think, for that.
I thought there was funding.
No, they're doing a study as far as.
Study,
just a study.
Just a study.
Okay, but that's a logical place if they're gonna put a new bridge, and, yeah, there's solar there, but I bet you that somebody would like to have a nice, new, reasonably priced unit in the solar. I got solar in my backyard, I bought it. So,
I have a compost pile in my backyard.
Nice.
Okay.
I saw yours, so I went out and got some pallets. We did it right.
Good for you. Tom, I'll point out on page 26 of this, Glenn Chalder lists 7 possible areas of exploration for zoning regulation changes.
Mhm.
So these are already pointed out by Glenn. If you're pursuing that P and Z.
The other thing, I don't know, I don't know who to contact in town. Who would be the right person to contact so I can learn about how to research grants?
manager.
You know,
Yeah.
the town man, we used to have a grant writer here
Yeah.
for a little bit of time, and her name was Sonia. And I don't know if you contact Ray Carpentino
Yeah.
and ask him, you know, what the relationship is, and if you can just have a conversation with her.
Right.
Or someone at the library.
I don't think
maybe.
she's involved with that.
They
No.
should be, yeah.
I
But-
don't mind
right.
doing the research and doing the contacts, because it's, again, it's long-term stuff, but
Right.
Yeah.
I don't wanna spend my weekends.
Kim, would somebody at CROG be helpful for Tom on that?
Always. Yeah.
You never know where grants are gonna come from. They can come from anywhere, right?
You can have private,
Yeah.
you can have small,
Yeah.
small grants from AARP, you can
Yeah.
have, you know, Capital Region Council of Governments, Department of Housing, the Feds, HUD. I
Mhm.
mean, there's all sorts of things.
So the first step is make the contacts and develop the list, okay?
And I guess the purpose of the grant, what would the purpose of the grant be? I mean,
Depending on who I'm talking.
right. is
But
it-
it's all
is it-
gonna,
is
it's
it
all
to-
gonna end up being affordable housing for a town.
Is it to buy land? Is it for our special housing fund that's not established yet? that's the purpose of the special housing fund, I think. If you get a grant,
That would be a great idea.
you know,
Yes,
that's the
Steve
town
Bonner.
council again,
Yeah.
town manager, town council.
I'd suggest the Greater Hartford Foundation for Public Giving.
Mhm.
They may not do it, but they're gonna know the grant business pretty well and direct you. And there were a lot of really
Right.
sharp people who were on the Rocky Hill Committee. I don't know if they're still affiliated.
Yeah. They came and spoke, I feel like they spoke at something recently. I know Chris Duff is on that committee though. He's pretty solid with that stuff.
So that's what I have. Any other questions?
I love that.
Yeah.
That land, yeah.
How many, you have a bigger map. Can I see how many acres?
Well, this doesn't tell you how many acres. This won't tell you.
Neither does this one.
No.
Wasn't there a
You
grid
know,
in
you go
there?
on the, you know how to go on a GIS system? Our GIS here?
I haven't, no, but I'll learn.
You just,
I mean, I
just
can do
Google
that.
Rocky Hill GIS, and you could, it'll, you can click on any parcel and it'll tell you
You have
the
it,
acres.
But it's here,
this
there's a
do you
grid
have
with
this
it.
Tell you
there?
acres and tell you who owns it. and-
Tom,
Yep,
don't you have that, right?
that's true, but my eyes aren't good enough to see what this coating is on the property. It's too tiny.
Yeah,
why I
it's
thought her
it's
map
light,
was-
yeah. Maybe they can,
What street was going there?
It's right here.
No, when you
That's
said you
a-
drove by
it's
this
coming
place.
up. This
Remember
is
we did
for
that
me.
walk audit with
Okay.
So they call
desegregate
it
Connecticut?
We got the
What was their,
magnifier.
This, I was
Town
down
something-
both
what
of
was
these
their-
streets. This is
their
a nice
push and
wide
their campaign
band,
was
and look
for
at all
like
this property.
Right.
town-oriented
Come
So
on,
there's the
Main
housing
Road.
or
right
something
there,
like
but I
that.
can't
Town-
do
What is that?
Can I try the
You see it,
magnifier?
Alan? I'm sorry?
They wanted, they
Magnifier.
wanted.
I tried to get a digital copy and then you
Because
could
that's
play
ours,
with it.
Busing
along
and-
side of Steam.
Nah,
Well, it
not
makes
very-
sense.
All right.
Instead of
Right
like
there, what
out
is
by the
that?
highway where there's
No,
nothing.
don't put it out where there's no public transportation.
Right.
State of Connecticut.
Put it
I don't
out,
remember what it was called.
No,
well,
Transit-oriented
development.
housing.
no, Gilbert is.
That's what it was.
Gilbert is.
You're
um,
7.5 acres, but that was divided up.
Okay.
No, that's
That's
not,
not-
yeah, it is.
Because
Is that-
the DOT wants to retain part of that property. And I think they were letting the town deal with 3 acres.
Did they say why they wanted to retain that?
DOT wants to retain the property.
Right by the highway, isn't it?
Probably for maintenance.
I think that I've seen
Just-
trucks
Yeah.
Over there?
there at
Yeah.
times. And also, when they dredged the Connecticut River, they deposited a lot of the materials there. I wonder whatever happened. Do you know, Kim?
Huh.
Do you remember when they dredged the river? Yeah,
Yeah.
David Cook, yeah,
Yeah.
a little while ago.
We have that. Is that what David was yelling about?
Well, that was
When he
the
put-
meeting
when he
because I
died?
wanted to put it on the cap
On
of
the
the
cap, oh, that was what that-
landfill.
Yeah.
And
Thank God you were there for that evening, huh?
Oh,
David?
I would never forget that.
So Kim, were you gonna go over some of the legislative wrap-up stuff?
I just wanted to make sure people were aware of the Council of Small Towns. There was a webinar this week. A lot of the laws, I mean, many things did not pass and are being taken up next
Oh,
session.
this is everything. Okay.
One of the things that was discussed during the webinar was the Affordable Housing Appeals List and about that 10%. And they're talking about next session doing a fair share allocation. They're gonna take that up next session, next legislative session, where the Council of Governments are going to be used as the areas of the state.
As
So
the what?
As the areas of the state to look at.
Yeah.
So, Capital Region Council of Governments, Connecticut River Council of Governments, each one of these regions will be taken up, and each region will be assigned a share of housing units or affordable housing units. And amidst, amongst that council of governments, we have 29 towns in Prague or whatever, those towns will be allocated so many units. So instead of doing 10%, every town doing 10%, they're going to do it a different way. It's going to be called a fair share allocation. And they're going to be taking that up next session.
So the idea would be, this town has 15, but this one has 5, and so it averages out, right?
Yeah. So if you only have 1,500 units in your town, why would you be doing more than if you have 10,000 units in your town?
Yeah.
You should be doing more units because you're a bigger community. But that's going to be taken up next session. A lot of this doesn't necessarily apply to this group, but it's interesting to learn about. There's the housing issues are primarily in House Bill 5474, and they're talking about housing choice vouchers. They're talking about assessments on affordable housing. They're talking about state-owned land requires OPM to prioritize Department of Housing plans for using available state-owned land to talk about
What page?
affordable housing.
They don't have numbers.
They don't have numbers, so.
Yeah. It was a-
It was a PowerPoint presentation, so they don't have numbers. Housing is probably in the middle of the.
I see housing and land use, transit-oriented communities.
Yeah, but they have quite a bit. I mean, we have to report permit data to DECD. I talked about the middle housing developments as of right. It allows municipalities to create as of right regulations for middle housing, whether it be duplex, triplex, or small cluster housing units, as of right in residential, commercial, and mixed-use zones.
Like R20, R40?
R20, R40, commercial, regional commercial, town center. That's what they're saying here, that we can be doing. Tax increment district funds, and what about tax exemptions? Tax exemptions for one of the laws that came out, tax exemptions, up to $500 a year for first-time home buyers for 5 years, that type of thing. I know it's a minor thing, but so there's some new laws that have passed, and there's new laws that are going to be reconsidered again next year because they unfortunately didn't pass. Short-term rentals was a big issue also. As far as municipalities, we have to adopt an ordinance about short-term rentals now.
Prohibiting them? Or
No,
encouraging?
to address them.
What they mean,
Yeah.
30 days or less, is that what the interpretation is?
Yeah. Airbnbs, that type of thing. What didn't pass, creating a housing growth fund to target additional funding to support transit-oriented development. Housing authority jurisdiction, this did not pass. Also authorizes the housing authority to expand its jurisdiction without the approval of a municipality. And then they talk about that's more of a deep thing. But temporary structures for homeless. There was going to be legislation that would allow on religious properties the ability for them to put 8 temporary structures for homeless individuals on religious properties. That did not pass. But it's interesting reading because it takes into account other things, property tax abatements, climate resiliency, siting council, so. But I just want you to be aware of it.
Thank you.
What's the significance of requiring 1 meter. If they put an accessory apartment in, sometimes they'll require 1 meter, and sometimes they'll allow 2 meters on a house. I don't know what the legal significance is.
That I don't know. It's probably more of a building code.
Yeah.
I will find out, I'll find out for you.
If you can, great.
Sounds like one of the deterrents from expanding, you know.
Well, I'm thinking, when it comes to the little house in back, they're still only, as far as I know, they're only allowing 1 meter.
1 meter, right?
Whereas if it was a
It could
separate
be
meter, they could-
considered
they
a
could-
separate
Yeah.
unit,
You
like
could-
an independent.
Yeah.
Well, I think the idea is, the original mother-in-law concept was to have a family member there.
Right.
And it was more of an accommodation out of kindness or whatever. Now, I think it's maybe evolved to a way to add housing and maybe let the homeowner make some money from having that little unit. I don't know if you've traveled anywhere recently, everywhere in the world, people
Right.
are cutting up the boxes, they got something delivered in and setting up a unit outside and charging an enormous amount of money.
Right.
There's a shortage of housing. We sit here on the committee and we say we like it, but if your neighbor next door all of a sudden put in 3 more units in his backyard, that may change the character of the neighborhood. What would it do to your property value?
So you're thinking that having 1 meter is one way for the town to control a little bit?
I don't know if it's is it, Kim, do you think?
Well, the whole thing, there was a public act for this past year where the legislature said, we have to get away from this community character. We have to modify our regulations to get away from that and deal with just site character. So we can look at this as a single property and talk about the site character of this site, but we can't look at what's going on with an application on this property with respect to the community character. So we had to modify our regulations about.
I think that's a huge issue. And if we collectively and our successors can meet the law's requirement of having 10% affordable housing, then theoretically, would we still be subject to that by right? That's not approved yet, and I have
No,
my
it's not.
doubts that it would be, or hopes that it wouldn't be. I don't know, it's a change of how we live. And for an old person like me, it doesn't come easily. We have the benefit here in Rocky Hill, low-density living, pretty much. I think Kelson Row will be an example, like many good affordable housing, well-designed, good materials, thought put into it. And it will be an asset to the town, but it's clearly a change in how some people would do it. They argued, and the town council in granting the abatement said, would you want to have the old Ames parking lot for another X years? So it's a difficult battle.
Keep in mind, affordable housing, all the affordable housing that we've been getting or have been approving has been at that 80% of median income.
Yeah.
We need
30.
to address
60,
the 60%, the
Yeah.
30, the 40%.
Yeah.
And the 80% seems to be palatable to people. The 30% needs to be palatable to people. The 40%, the 60% of median income needs to be palatable to people,
Yeah.
because people have a right to housing. I truly believe that.
Here's the, on that line, what I would say that we may want to consider in the future. At Greenfield Village, which, I don't know, a couple hundred units, do you think? There are 10 scattered that are 30%. Okay? And is there a way to convince the town council to go back to, we have a lot of condo owners in town, and there still are a fair number of apartments on West Street, and near me, I think there are apartments still. And say to the developer, we will eliminate your real estate taxes or reduce them significantly if you will deed restrict 10% of your units as affordable housing. We'll give you some kind of an incentive to do that. It may not work, but I think it's worth asking at least.
I don't disagree with that. I mean,
The housing
In the real
exists, it
world,
just, you know, how do we make a
people need the
financial deal so that
yeah, so
it'll
it works
work?
for both.
Yeah, we have to
parties.
think out of the box.
Yeah.
Nothing's gonna happen.
You know, you mentioned at the last meeting that, and you didn't know and we didn't know, if the VA houses up there are going to count in affordable housing. Did you hear anything more about that?
No, I didn't look into that, because they don't even have that project, I think. I don't know if they even have it. I think they have the money set aside for it, but I don't know if they have the plans for how it's gonna work yet, and it's,
Yeah, I'm communicating with the
Yeah.
state rep on that.
Okay.
And she says, because I want to know what exists there. How is that housing included in the census data, which is in our denominator?
yeah.
And I don't have the answer. The CROG
I
people.
thought it was institution. I
Pardon?
don't know. I thought it was institution. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
And everything is so complicated, I'm not going to say what it is. I don't know.
What makes me wonder about that is because right at the beginning of this meeting, you were talking about the way they calculate and how they count the different places. This is just a follow-up on that thought pattern.
Yeah, there is a very helpful fellow at CROG who was doing some other things, and he said he'd get back, and he suggested that there's that chart which I showed you, but he said, go look for the footnotes. And there were no footnotes, but the law is there. And I didn't have time you have to go read all the law and then the subsections of it and so on, because I thought I even saw something that said accessory apartments don't include in the total, but I have to go back and look and see that.
Entirely
So,
possible.
pardon me?
I don't think they do.
Not unless they're designated affordable and deed restricted.
Right.
That's it. If we have to deed restrict everything, that's
Right,
a
but
different-
I think at some point in time that I perceive our duty is to tell the council, okay, we got so many units of this type, and these are units that aren't counted, but they're something that we're doing. Kim, in her infinite powers, there were subdivisions at one point in time where certain units
Or
were,
designated as deed restricted, but only for a period of time.
yeah.
That was
Right.
before,
Only for the first buyer.
yeah.
too.
Yeah, but I don't know, is there one or are there 20 of those in the town?
No.
So
Those
it's
ones up-
it's much more colorful than the black and white numbers show on that particular grid.
Right.
And if we have 60 West Street, which is, I understand, a very successful assisted living, and that the people live there for more than 30 days, under the new way of counting housing units. The whole idea is not to undercount people living in a town because some federal money is allocated based upon the number of housing units. So there's an effort to include in the counts people of everything. And that's why, we may have at 30 George Street, there's 6 people living there. And we may be slightly less well off if they're treating that as a single home. You follow what I'm
I
trying to say?
agree. Yeah,
But by
I see.
state law, they are treated them like a single-family home. But we have a lot of assisted living developments in town where people are there for over 30 days. So,
It's not affordable housing.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
No way,
No,
no way
not
to
even
slice
close.
that up, it's not affordable housing.
Well, I mean, there's so many colors of it. Do you know what Title 19? Title 19?
Title
Title
19.
Do you know what that is?
Eventually, if people go on there because they can no longer afford it, they fall
They
back
sign
into
over
Title
all
19.
their assets to the state of Connecticut, and then
Right.
they get the right
Yeah.
to live somewhere, so
Mhm.
I don't know how they fit in, but it's the type of thing I'm kind of looking at.
Celtics are
Yeah.
playing,
Hold on, sign inside.
Yeah.
I'm not even a member of that, I could just leave.
I thought they were a singing group.
I think it's even, Kim, I had a question, like
Oh.
regarding this, the CHAFA guy, people coming and talking to us, does it need to be with the town council or they can come talk to us first?
I would think rather than having come and talk to us, I would think it would behoove us to have them speak to the town council and then do the forum.
I mean, I would
My
say
thoughts.
we should host them coming to the town council.
Yeah,
Okay.
Our committee has invited them
Yeah.
to come and speak to the town council.
yeah.
And we can kind of say, this is why we've brought them and they have information to share and it's both. And then-
Right.
Yeah.
That's fine.
When does the town council have meetings?
Well, it's really up to the managers and the mayor as far as setting the agenda, so
Okay.
I'll reach out to them. But they meet typically the first and third Monday, monthly. However, in the summer, they're thinking of going to one meeting a month.
Yeah, so the
I'm not sure which one.
next one might be
It
the
would be a Monday.
first,
Yes.
the first Monday of August or something like
Yeah.
that.
I would recommend that we know more better about what we're doing, and this August is not the greatest time to do it. I don't care.
For what?
To meet with the council and CHFA or something.
Well, no, that's basically for them to do a presentation about what CHFA
Right.
is, what they do.
And then we can ask
here.
questions.
Well, no, it's not, that's.
No,
for-
that'd
No,
just
but
be
no,
them
us.
presenting.
That's-
They're
that's-
presenting, but when we
to the
come
council.
back for our next meeting, we can ask questions among ourselves.
I would rather put the pedal to the gas than say, oh, sometime in the distant future, because we still want to get CHAFA to come to talk to residents.
Yeah, we wanna do a
So
public
that would
forum.
be, that'd be further out, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be
think-
sitting here a year from now and
No.
be like, oh, we're still scheduling CHAPA to come and talk, you know?
No.
It's-
Getting them here
We want it to
supporting
be
yeah.
soon.
Yeah. And they seem to have a ready-made presentation
Yeah,
anyway.
they
They
said
seem
that.
ready to go.
Sure they
Yeah,
do,
they do
yeah.
a couple every
They're
week, so.
The meeting, our next meeting it's July 3rd, and I don't know why I put that down. July 3rd doesn't seem
Fourth
like.
of July Eve.
Yeah, why? Why would we do that? So I don't know if we want to change that date. I think that makes sense,
Mhm.
seeing that we're not here the next day. I would have to find meeting space first, but I can reach out to people. We have time. I can reach out to people. It would be a special meeting, and we can certainly set a date for that when we know what's available.
If it works out, can we do the week after, either 10th or 11th?
I cannot do the 11th
Okay.
because it's my mom's birthday, and I only have one of them, so that's important to me.
You said 10th? You said the 10th though, 10th or
10th is a
11th.
Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday. We could do that. We'd have to get different meeting space because the wetlands agency
Yeah.
is in here. But we would just probably seek down in the community center.
It works for me if it ends up being something that we can schedule for that day instead.
Everybody okay with the 10th, if that
Yeah.
works out?
Yeah, I think so, I just need to check.
If I could just jump to suggestions for the next agenda. We talked a fair amount about ADUs, accessory dwelling
Mhm.
units. Would it be possible, Kim, to kind of give us an idea of a template of how somebody could do an ADU so that we can talk about how we might be able to educate the town how to do that?
Sure. Mhm.
You know, like if somebody said, I do wanna put a tiny house
Sure.
in my backyard,
Sure.
how do I do it?
Educate.
Cause I know people that sell ADUs, and the first thing anybody says is, okay, well, where do I put it? And he goes, oh, well, it depends on the town, and depends on this, and depends on this.
And
then-
it does.
And then nobody ends, and then it ends up that nobody ends up doing it. Because, but there's many companies that sell modular accessory dwelling units, and everybody gets really excited about it until they find out that they have to do more research. So if we could provide the research of how you could do that in Rocky Hill,
Okay.
you know, maybe, it's a unit, whether it's something that's counted or not, at the end of the day is not just a number. At the end of the day is
It's
actually have
housing.
more housing.
Okay, Jeff, are you coordinating on the next meeting, or is Kim? Well,
I will be contacting, since I'm here, I'll be contacting the manager and the mayor as far as working on dates that would be acceptable.
Okay.
And then we'll
See,
connect.
yeah, we can connect
To
to
reach out
coordinate with
to-
the Marcus, I believe,
Yeah.
maybe, from Chapa to see if that works.
what about getting somebody from DOH?
Well, that's more for, that's long-term, that's for that's, you know, a few months out as far as a public forum, because we wanna make sure we can, we wanna have DOH, we wanna have CHFA there. and
No,
we
no,
wanna
I'm talking
advertise.
more from like, the developer's perspective, like, what Chafa is gonna bring on the first meeting, right? Like, what can they offer to bring potential developers to build affordable housing?
Yeah, but are you talking about like for the public forum?
Nope, I'm more talking about like from the developer's perspective, what can they bring or they offer that we can present to potential developers, like, hey, this is all is what's available for you if you wanna come, built in one of the open spaces.
Does Dimple work for DOH?
He did, but I would talk to Mike Santoro also. That's the person I would talk to, which is the name you were given. But I've talked to him in the past too, so. So I can reach out to him. You can reach out to Mike Santoro at DOH, which Charlie's doing that also for
Yeah.
some other thing.
Hey, did Dimple go to UEM State Agency, or where did he go?
He's at Department of Administrative Services now. Because I dealt with Dimple on block grants. And I'm glad I don't have to deal with him on block grants anymore. But he knows that, so that's okay.
If you would like, I can, work with you on looking for where we could get potential grants
Great.
to,
There's enough work there.
right, and that's why I'm like,
Yeah.
I can share some, so maybe, I don't know, like, first thing is to find out where we can start.
Right. I will go through Ray and find out who he recommends that I talk to,
Okay,
and then you and I together can approach that person.
yeah, that
Okay.
sounds good.
Gotta start somewhere.
Gotta start somewhere.
First step, man.
Now, I don't know if Ray's going to want, Ray as the town manager, I know has a lot of people coming at him, so I don't know if he's going to want
Yeah, that's right.
me to reach out to him. I plan on doing that about this meeting, rather than have everybody come at, so, I will find out, cause he will tell you if,
Because
go
all
through
we're
Kim or
looking
go
for
through
is who to
whatever.
contact. So you wanna
Yep.
reach out to him for that, that's fine.
And I can come back to you guys, I'll come back to
Sure.
both of you, okay?
Thank you.
That's everything. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Agreement?
Aye.